In this video, we'll be writing a basic calculator using a switch statement. So we'll come to these functions later. Let's start with the main method. Now, I've only got a basic message here that will print out the text basic calculator. Now, we'll start off by declaring the required variables. So we need two numbers, one to hold number 1 and the other number to hold, the other variable to hold the second number. And we also need a character to hold our operator. So let's get our first number. So I'm going to copy this statement and reuse it. We'll ask the user to enter the first number. I will keep it short, enter first number. And now we'll use scanf to store the entry. So here we specify that it's a long float, and long float because we've got a double there. So otherwise we could have just used the letter F on its own. And we'll put it into the memory address of our first variable number 1. And then I'm going to copy this same lines and put it in here. And just change a few things like second number into num2. Now let's get the character. Oh gosh, okay, the character. So enter operator. Now we need to specify to the user what sort of operators we are getting. So it's a plus, a minus, a multiplication, and a division. And then we need to change the formatting rule here. We say we are expecting a character, and that's going to go into our operator variable. I should have tested this before I move on any further, but let's do that now. So when I enter the first number, it actually skips the part where I've entered the operator, and it goes directly to entering a second number. So that's not good. Now the fix is really easy. I'm only going to add a space here. Now adding a space here will consume that new line that's coming in from the previous input. When we've entered the first number, that new line that we send through the key, the enter key from the keyboard is not being consumed. So it's being consumed as the operator needed for the, so as the character needed for the second variable, that's why it doesn't ask us for the operator, because it only uses that new line instead. So when we put a space here, we consume that new line that stayed in the buffer from the previous operation, and then that also allows us to enter a character. So let's give this a try and see how it works. So now I'll say 3 plus, now it's working correctly. It's not giving me any result because we haven't done the work, but it's important to get these steps working, and we're making sure that everything is being scanned into the variables correctly. Now let's write up our functions. Let's start with the first function to perform the addition. Now we want this function to actually return the results, so let's do that. We can use the same names, but these are different variables to the ones we have in the main. And we just want to return num1 plus num2. And we can reuse that line to subtract. We just change the messages. Multiply. Now we have a multiplication. And for the division, right, I should have, yep. Divide, and that's gonna give us number 1 divided by number 2. So let's just compile and make sure we haven't got any major errors or some syntax errors on the way. And let's test these functions out in our switch statement. So we'll start off our switch statement with the word switch when I type it in correctly. And we take in the variable. So in this case, we want our character or our operator to be our input. Here we're going to create cases. We'll start with the addition, and let's print f the result. And I'll keep the message generic. Now over here we want to print this in 2 decimal places, so 0.2, and we want to specify that it's a double, so long float. And then now we call add, passing in 2 variables as number 1 and number 2. We want to make sure we break because, well, although we don't have another case after this, but if we don't use a break, then it's going to go to the other cases when we write them. So 2 plus 2, we get 4. All right, now let's duplicate these. Let's have a minus, and here we can call subtract, and let's give it a shot. So 2 minus 1 gives us 1. Good. Let's do the multiplication. We call multiply. And while we're at it, let's do the division. Divide. Let's test them out. So we do need to test the multiplication first. So that's 4. That's looking good. And let's do the division. So we say 4 divide by 2, and that gives us the correct result of 2. Perfect. Now what happens if we actually, putting another character like this? So nothing really happens because none of the cases execute. But we can actually give a message to the user. In the default case, in the case where it's an invalid entry, we let the user know. And a new line, and I get rid of all this text. Okay, let's test our default case. Got a syntax error there. And now if we say, percentage sign, it says it's in an invalid operator. So that's our basic calculator. Stay tuned for the next video in the case where the user tries to divide by 0. So I'll see you then.